stand
Yeah,
out, do something a little bit more interactive. Everyone can send an email, send a video, make
that's
it
awesome.
engaging.
That's
Send
awesome.
examples of your work. So a lot of the weight of my proposals and self-confidence, or I wouldn't say self-confidence, self-promotion, weighs very heavily on the visual impact of my work.
Welcome to the Creative Endeavor Podcast. This is the podcast bringing you inspiring stories from creative professionals from around the world. It's real conversations with real artists. And I'm Andrew Tischler. Thank you so much for joining me here in the studio. Now, in this episode, I've got a real treat for you. I'm bringing back a Creative Endeavor favorite. I'm talking to Carla Grace, who's an incredible artist based in South Australia. Carla paints beautiful, exquisite paintings of wildlife and all kinds of different species, but painted in an incredible, realistic manner. She even mixes some imaginary elements in there to a great effect, creating works that are unique, striking, and engaging. And not only that, these are collected from people from all over the world. Now, Carla is somebody that I've been watching for many years. And as I mentioned, she's been on the podcast now 3 other times. And I've been looking at how she does what she does, not just from the painting standpoint, but how she markets herself. I'm such a fan of taking these two things and combining them. That is the old school approach of selling your work in the physical realm, but also the new school approach of fully utilizing these digital tools that we have at our fingertips. And Carla is such a great example of how to take those two things and marry them together. Now, Carla revealed to me in this episode some incredible marketing strategies for how she's pushing herself a little further ahead. Just move by move, bit by bit, she is smashing some incredible goals. And I just love how gutsy she is with the deals that she goes for, how she gets these huge projects over the line. And just hearing about her new studio and what was involved with that and the support that she received just from asking, it was awesome. This encouraged me to be a little bit more bold in my approach and to really ask for those things and make that approach. Try and get that deal. Have a little more guts as well with what I'm doing. I hope it'll do the same for you and inspire action. That's what the Creative Endeavor is all about. And I got so much out of this podcast. I really hope you will too. Now, before we get stuck into this episode, a huge shout out and a thank you to our sponsor, Rosemary & Co. Now, Rosemary & Co. make the finest quality artist brushes in the world. They are second to none. Hands down, make the finest brushes I have ever used. That's why it's such a privilege and an honor to team up with them here with the Creative Endeavor. Now, Rosemary & Co. not only make oil painting brushes, you know I'm an oil painter, they make some fantastic bristles and synthetics. I use them every day here in the studio, but they also make watercolor brushes, acrylic brushes. Heck, they even make makeup brushes. So if you want to get your hands on some Rosemary & Co. brushes, then check that link in the description down below and you're going to be blown away. Not only are these going to be the best quality brushes that you've used, I'm sure of that, but they're also going to be great value for money. So check them out. Click that link in the description down below or in the show notes accompanying this podcast. And once again, a huge thank you and a shout out to Rosemary & Co. Thank you for sponsoring this episode of the Creative Endeavor. All right, I'm going to get out of here and let Carla Grace take over. Here she is. This is Carla Grace in the Creative Endeavor. Carla Grace, welcome back to the Creative Endeavor Podcast. What a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you for having me again. It's good to be back.
There is so much that we have to talk about. So very much. First of all, let's jump into this. people will remember from the previous episodes that we've recorded together,
Mm.
a little bit about your story, about how you started, and some of your tips as well, which were fantastic with the how you went into professional painting. But you're coming to us now, and for the people seeing the video version of the podcast on Tish Academy, they're going to have a real treat because you're coming to us now from your brand new studio. I've
Yes.
been following you on Instagram. I've been seeing some of the progress of how this thing's
Ooh.
come together.
Mm.
Wow. Your studio might be bigger than mine now. I think it might be but tell me about this new space. What a project.
Yeah, so I've been saving up for the past decade, honestly, just putting money away for the dream of one day building my dream studio, which I think every artist sort of has in the back of their minds, but you never really think it's actually going to materialize, especially in such a dramatic way. So we had been planning now for the past 2 years to do a studio. We just weren't sure how it was going to happen. And eventually we decided to build a separate shed. One it's a big one, so 18 by 9 meters. Half is my studio, half is the gym, storage, Ryan's space, etc. So my studio is 9 by 6. Yeah, 9 by 6, and then it's got an added 3 by 6 on the side, which is where I'm going to eventually be doing my workshop and bathroom. And then so the build was all good. There's just a big shed. And then it got to the point now where we had to do the cladding and actually fit it out so that it turned into an actual studio space. And basically, we tapped out on all that savings. It just got to the point where we're like, we have to DIY this. And so that's what I've been doing for the past like 5 months.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
DIYing the whole thing. So no idea how to do any of it. YouTube has helped me a huge amount in this.
Excellent. Excellent.
And here we are in a space that's still not finished. I don't have any windowsills or anything like that. There's still a lot left to do. As you can see, there's still boxes. But I'm just now I'm at a point where it's functional and I'm starting to paint. And I will just every day do one little thing to finish the space off just that little bit more.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So I really appreciate a bit about this process. Having just done the renovations on this space myself, and doing a lot of the building, and I've had to roll up my sleeves as well, do the whole YouTube University DIY thing. But I had to chuckle a little bit, but I also at the same time felt your pain as you were putting in that insulation between the battens, going, "Oh, far out, Carla." Were you itchy after that?
Yes. And it wasn't even it was meant to be one of those really good ones that don't actually, but it just, yes, itchy, very itchy.
So this studio really does, I mean, from the design, it looks like an amazing design. Walk us through it and describe it for the people that are listening. And I'd love to hear your thoughts about what do you think makes a really good art studio?
Okay, that's a good question. I'll send through the 3D plan that I put together for the studio space. I teamed
Amazing.
up with Caboodle, so you can visualize it as I'm talking. I teamed up with Caboodle because I wanted really good cabinetry. And honestly, if I didn't team up with Caboodle, I would be stuck with the cabinetry that I had in my old studio, which was IKEA bits and pieces like put together, which were working but falling apart after
Mhm.
after so many years of use. So I teamed up with Caboodle and we put together this design. And I basically had this huge wall behind me that is completely free of any furniture or cabinetry. That is just my painting wall.
Mhm.
And then I've got a corner where I have my kitchen cabinets, and then a corner on the opposite side of the room where I have my office section. That's what I'm talking to you from now.
Mhm.
And basically, what I wanted was as little clutter as possible in the studio with as much space. And it was a logical flow. So everything is revolving around filming.
Right.
And tripods and having enough space around me that I'm not banging into everything, because I'm like a baby giraffe that's just learning to walk. My legs are so long. I don't have any control over anything, and I will walk into it if it's in my way. Even if it's not in my way, somehow I'll walk into it. So we have wall mounted some cameras so that 2 out of my 4 are completely off the ground. And I've got one corner that is solely dedicated to filming tutorials so that I can have a tutorial that's partway finished, such as like an oil painting one, and not have to pack up the studio and then continue on with an oil painting or acrylic. And basically the key was to have cabinets that I could put wheels on and roll around the studio, because this island in the middle, it's massive, but I don't want it to stay there. Like that's much too much of a long-term commitment for me.
Wow.
And I said to Caboodle, I was like, I need to be able to wheel this thing around. And so we put it in half so it can split in half. And I haven't put the wheels on yet because that's on the list, the to-do list. And I'll be able to wheel those around. So in the event that I'm hosting a workshop eventually, or a private gallery viewing or things like that, then I can move those around to be a more functional space. And it's the same with my tutorial desk, which is that one that you can see there.
Yeah.
And that has an extended countertop that has soft close drawer rollers underneath the counter, so I can roll it forward as I sit and do the tutorial,
neat.
and then roll it back so it's a normal counter edge, so it's not in the way of the drawers. So we've worked a lot with these cabinets, and Caboodle's super excited, and I'm excited, and I've never really done such high level brand collaboration, and it's been a really great learning curve, creating pictures and deliverables and all of those kind of things. But it's been honestly a lot of fun as well. Frustrating, but fun.
It sounds amazing. Now, look, you're saying something there that I just want to kind of go back to. When you say I teamed up with Caboodle, what do you mean?
I sent them a message.
You didn't just go to Caboodle and say, I want that one, and that you paid for it. Like, knowing you did something clever. What did you do? What did you
I'm
do?
learning all sorts of clever things. So I sent them a message. So basically I looked for because I knew I wanted to work with some form of cabinetry brand, because I had no money left over, and I was like, my studio is going to look absolutely crap with the furniture that I've got. I need to team up with someone, and I need to pitch my idea in such a way that it's irresistible, basically. And so I looked on social media and looked for brands that work with influencers. And I love Caboodle. It's with Bunnings. I go to Bunnings every other day, even just to have a coffee. And it's one of those reliable brands that I know everybody loves, and they work with a lot of influencers. And I hate that term, but anyway, so I sent them a message on Facebook. I was like, hey, you only use cabinetry for kitchens and laundries. Have you ever considered creating a functional artist studio space with them? I have some really great ideas I would love to propose to you. What's the best contact number? And so they said, yeah, we'd love to hear ideas. Here, contact, and send us an email, send us your pitch, and we'll go from there. So I put together a video for them, and I did a drawing on my iPad, and filmed it, did a little spiel, and they were like, yeah, we'll put this to the team. And they were like, yeah, cool, what do you need? And so then we put our heads together, and yeah, awesome team to work with. Like, I got to plug them. Like, despite being like teamed up with them, they have actually been a real dream to work with, like down to earth, calling me out on stuff. They're like, you don't need that. You're right, I don't. Like, try this
but
instead.
I want it.
Try this is more functional. So it's been a really great process. But yeah, so I've actually started like leveraging some skills that I've been developing along the way, and landing some pretty good collaborations that have been absolutely mind-boggling. Like, I went to Johannesburg in March with the Kevin Richardson Foundation, or the Lion Whisperers, what he's better known as. And they flew me out to Johannesburg to come in and meet the lions and take photos with them and create this little story, because I proposed working with them. In the same way, I sent them a really great, interesting pitch. Kevin was actually following me and he had commented on something, and I was like, hey, I've been following you for years too. Let's work together. And then the pitch I proposed was really generous and new, like a new way of thinking about painting the lions in such a way that really tells a story and captivates people. And I, again, did my pitch as a video and put together a draft idea. So my idea is to paint a whole pride of lions sort of interacting with each other from an aerial perspective,
Wow.
which has
Wow.
never really been done before. And there's a reason for that, because it's really hard to do. And so
Right.
that sort of, I put that together and we got the drone out. But anyway, they put the video through to their board. They had an AGM and they said, we're going to have to float this past the board. And yeah, the board came back and said they absolutely love my work, they love my idea, and they would like to fly me out to Joburg and yeah, see where it goes,
Carla
basically.
Grace. Wow. Look, this is a really classic example here of if you don't ask, you don't get,
Yeah,
you know? So
yeah.
where did you, is there a particular place that you learned about your self-promotion? And I almost cringe when I say that, because you really are providing a service. You're doing something unique. Your artwork is so beautiful and it's valuable. And it's not only valuable in terms of, it's worth a dollar amount, but it's valuable in terms of what it says and what it does. I just love the way you connect what you do with people that, have a need that is aligned with you. It's very much parallel here, isn't it? So did you study like how to sell or how to market yourself, like, because the way you promote yourself is second to none. It's absolutely brilliant. I'm bringing you up in conversation all the time. I'm directing my students to your work. I've even, like, on a recent video, we pulled up your Instagram and website and we're using it as an example of what to do. So
That's so funny.
it's really fascinating. Where does this background come from, or is it natural?
uh I hope it's natural. The because I'm not really getting it from anywhere else. I observe. So I'm a very observant person,
Mhm.
and I'm drawn to what encourages me, basically, and
Mm,
what motivates me, and I assess the elements that really strike me and grab my attention, and then I basically try and create that in what I'm doing. I've found that everything is adaptable, and it's not like you're not set in stone. And there's a very clear separation, for me anyway, between Carla the mum, the wife, the um, whatever else I am, and Carla Grace art. So when I'm proposing ideas and putting myself out there, it's not from a very personal point of view. It's from the point of view that if I don't do it, nothing else is going to happen. Like if I want to see growth in this area, I'm going to have to do it. And it took me obviously a long time to develop the confidence. And that came along with seeing myself as like a separate version, but it's not really
mm,
like it's obviously so much more complicated than that, because Carla Grace art wouldn't be what it is without Carla the mum, etc., etc.
right.
But at the same time, I can't I can't put so much weight and emotions and dependence on every pitch I put forward, or each promotion I make. It's not, it's an experiment. It's
Mhm,
not
mm,
the be all and end all. Like I'm not putting all my eggs in one basket. It's
mhm.
I'm going to experiment with a pitch to Better Home and Gardens, because they can say no, but they could also say yes. So I don't have any fear of rejection.
That's it
I think
right there. That's it right there. Yeah,
I've
yeah,
gotten so
yeah.
used to it. And like I had completely sworn off ever entering my art into any sort of Jured competitions or anything like that. And against my better judgment, I decided that I would submit my large scale flamingo painting into a competition where they select artworks for a curated museum exhibit, the Birds and Art Museum exhibit in Wisconsin.
Mhm.
And I was like, what the heck? This thing's just on the wall. I may as well submit it. And it got in. So
Oh,
my
wow.
flamingo painting is now on the way to America to go be part of a museum show. And so I
Wow.
was like, okay, cool. Just, I
Yeah.
think we get so caught up on the constant rejection.
Mhm.
And I mean, for the last 10 years, like you asked me this last year or even the year before, I'd be like, oh no,
Mm.
why would I do that? Like, caboodle's too big for me. Like, I don't have the right, I can't carry that sort of brand association. But when the
Wow.
idea is there and the confidence to pull it off,
Yeah.
despite experience,
Yeah.
um, people are keen to just
Wow.
give it a go. Um, yeah, and stand
Yeah.
out, do something a little bit more interactive. Everyone can send an email, and they get lots of emails. Send a video, make
That's
it
awesome.
engaging.
That's
Send
awesome.
examples of your work. So a lot of the weight of my proposals and self-confidence, or I wouldn't say self-confidence, self-promotion, weighs very heavily on the visual impact of my work. So the proposals I put through have a lot of examples, past work, sales, auctions, whatever
Yes.
else,
Yeah.
I can throw at it. So I'm not just relying on a great idea, like that is the foundation, but people want to visualize it. They really want to see what you're capable of or what you're
Right.
hoping will come from it. So it's not, you're not basing it on hopes and dreams. And I
Mm.
think a lot of people can get caught up on saying, oh, I really want to be able to do this. I wish, and say, no, I can do this with what you can, with what you've got.
Mhm.
This is what I can do. And so it's very confident, active tones.
Mhm.
And this has all just been picked up along the way. I haven't done a course. I've just observed, trial and error. This is like 10 years of observation, like 17,
Wow.
more than that, long time, my whole life of observing.
So no business podcasts, no sales podcasts, no nothing.
No.
Wow. Wow.
No.
Okay.
I just
Far
watch
out.
accounts that I like. I think had subscribed to a few newsletters
Yeah.
and a few tips, and like, so I never read a full article. Like, I don't know how many people have time to read full articles.
No, ain't
So
nobody
like
got
the
time for that.
headlines will usually give me a tip.
Mm.
But aside from that, it's all by trial and error, basically.
That's amazing. I laugh about this because we spoke several months ago, and you were mentioning something about Ryobi, and
Yeah.
I was doing my studio DIY here and videoing the whole thing, and so I thought, well, as a joke, like I've got Ryobi everything.
Mm.
Everything's Ryobi. And as a joke, I made sure that there was a Ryobi in just about every frame. There was that bright pop of fluoro green. Like, and it just like putting throughout the video, hey, Ryobi, I'm available. Just, but I
That's so
love this.
funny.
I love this. Like, because it's amazing how many of us are afraid to just ask. And just by asking, you do open up that possibility. It's not going to happen if you don't ask. But I want to add something else to this. You've been painting for professionally for well over a decade, right? Like you've put in the hard yards, and you've been painting before that, before you went pro, for a lifetime you've put into this. So there's years of building your work up to the quality that it is. So no wonder when they see it, they're like, "Oh, good night. You mean we could associate with the likes of this?" I mean, it's phenomenal. And I again, I want to shout you out here because that flamingo painting is still one of my favorite paintings that you've done. I've pulled it up here on the other screen. I mean, I love your work, but this thing was just unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable.
Thank
Um,
you.
so it has it sold yet? And is
No,
being
it's not
borrowed from the
sold.
being been borrowed from the client? Okay, not yet.
No,
Okay,
yeah.
but we'll wait till you take out the prize, and then I'm sure somebody's going to pick this up because it's just good night. Let's talk about the flamingo painting for a second, and then I want to get back to some more business stuff because I love geeking out with you about the business side of things.
Yeah.
This flamingo painting, describe this to us. It looks like a monster. It's got to be well over 36 by 48 inches. How big was that painting?
So that painting was a particular challenge, and I set a challenge to be insane for no other reason than I like it. And the size of it is 1.3 by 1.1 meters.
Wow.
And the limit I set for myself was 2 applications of paint and walk away. So
Wow.
so that's excluding toning the canvas. So I toned the canvas. I had done a study piece before jumping into it to see whether or not it was achievable. And so I played around with doing a complementary tone on the base of the study one, which was blues to set off the oranges and pinks. And then I did just a raw sienna one for the main piece. And I regret that because the complementary base tone made it so much easier to create the vibrancy and colors, whereas the raw sienna base tone just blended with all the warm tones. It just anyway, so lesson learned there. But so I toned the canvas, and then my blocking in layer was done a lot more careful. And then so the blocking in layer was done really, really well. And that's one application. So I would just go over the whole painting, apply that first layer of paint as detailed as possible. So it could have several layers of color to create like how it looked basically, which took me about a month for that size painting. And there's 24 birds in that one. And then the second layer basically was like painting it again. And that layer was a little bit more focal detailed and a little bit more refined. And that was it. And I walked away. Some went really well. Some days I really, really nailed it with the color mixes and the way that I added the paint to the canvas. Other areas did not. So they looked a little bit more unfinished. But what I became really interested in was having this overall really impressive piece that was from a distance because of its scale and the amount of detail in it. So the birds and all of the characters and everything that was happening in the painting. From when you're looking at it, it looks really finished. And then the closer you go, the more you see, because you're starting to see, oh, this isn't quite finished, or there's a little bit less detail here and there's a lot of detail there, or you can start seeing the artist at work and you can see more and more as you get closer. And that sort of opens up a bit more of a narrative. And that particular painting I put together from 2 or 3 completely separate photographs. And I like Frankensteined all the parts of the birds. And there's one main bird in the center at the top. It's like the point of the triangular composition that I put together with this wing out. And I just left out the other wing, because usually when a bird stretches, it's got 2 wings that go up. I just put one.
Yeah.
And I just completely left the other one out because I was like, you know what? I don't think anyone's going to pick up on that. But when I point it out, they're going to be like, oh, okay, right, there you go. So
yeah.
There's little quirks in there, and like there's some really awkward flamingos trying to like look in at you, and they're making eye contact with the viewer, and some are not interested at all. So like there's a lot more happening in that, but it was a really fun piece to put together. And my 3-year-old at the time was obsessed with flamingos, so she loved it as well.
Wonderful. So again, beautiful composition on this painting. And I've just got to say, really clever use of color. The eye continues to dart around and around and around this piece. It's fantastic. And I love how it kind of falls apart to the edges as well. You've got one flamingo over there on the far right that is very loosely painted. And but it also provides a bit of a depth, even though they're all kind of huddled up here together. You can see that delineation and that separation between one bird to the next. Yeah, it's cool. I really, yeah,
Thank you.
I really hope this does well at the competition. But that's an interesting one. The old competitions. Every time I've entered one, I've just felt like, oh, shouldn't have done that. Mind you, I get rejected from just about everything I enter. So that's why. Oh, I knew I shouldn't have entered that one. But if it got in, I'd be like, "Hey, what a clever guy! Look, I got into this." But was this something? you said something about not entering jury shows. Tell me about that. Why is this something that you've shied away from or have rejected with your career and your particular take on things as a professional artist?
I've stopped looking into competitions or jury shows mostly because in past experience, there's been an unfathomable disconnect between the artworks that are chosen as the winning pieces and the brief. So like the structured outline for the entries and the audience, basically. So they usually always have like an audience can choose and vote or whatever. There's usually some form of element there where people can vote for someone to win a prize. And there's such a disconnect between what wins and what the competition is about. And it's, and the more I researched about it, the more I discovered that it was based on the jurors, their personal preferences and their artistic career. And it had absolutely nothing to do with the actual art. So there wasn't a very unbiased, it didn't feel unbiased. Like it was very skewed, rigged kind of a thing. So I just was like, I don't really have time for that. So they can play their game and I'll just keep making art and carry on.
You just mentioned something there. It's not an angle that I've considered before, where this makes total sense that a juror might throw a spanner into the works by voting for something that they know would be controversial because their name would then be attached to that headline. Like
Yep.
so and so, votes best in prize for the Turner Prize, a banana taped to the wall. Well, who the heck made that decision? Or look at what wins. I don't know if that was the Turner Prize, but just looking at what wins the Turner
Yeah.
Prize. Oh, okay. Listen, okay, we got to talk about this. Let me ask you something. Okay. Speaking of art that's being produced today and just throwing our opinions in the mix, what'd you think of the official King Charles portrait?
You know what? I don't even follow it. I don't even know what won.
Do you want me to do a screen share?
Sure.
Okay. Here we go. Here we go. I can't believe you haven't seen it yet. Have you not seen the memes? King Charles portrait. I had a good chat with my buddy about this, and my buddy was saying that it's pretty dark. Here we go. Share screen. Here we go.
This was quite the build-up.
Oh, don't get too excited.
Okay.
There you go. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, right.
That's the King
Hmm.
Charles official portrait.
Wow.
I've been asked about this recently about, what do you think? And I'm like, I on the live stream, like, oh, far out, dude. I'm not commenting on, I'm not touching this one. But I must admit, like, because I have been asked a few times now, I, I'm not digging it. I'm really not digging it. It's making me feel kind of icky, to be honest. There's something dark and ominous about it.
Mm.
Yeah.
If that was the intent of the artist, well done. It is a risky move to create a portrait like that to go into the palace, to go into the royal archives of portraiture, because
Yeah.
there is a lot of big names in there and there is
Yeah.
a lot of prestige. And to
Hmm.
create disruption at that scale,
Hmm.
man, you got some balls. Well
Yeah.
played.
Yeah.
Like
It's almost like,
ambition
oh, wow.
just
Yeah.
skyrocket. I would not have had the skill, like the guts to do that.
Yeah.
Um,
It's like
like
Jonathan Yeo is probably going, yeah, I'm gonna make this dude look like he's on fire. I'm
it's like,
like,
I would like to know what the artist's actual
yeah.
perception and opinion is of the royal family, because he's portraying some very powerful messages with that
Hmm.
portrait,
Hmm.
um, which is interesting. Yeah. So thanks for showing me that.
So it's but anyway, back to competitions. Like
Yes.
I fully appreciate what you're saying about the juried process.
Mm.
There's an exhibition that was happening here, a Youth Art Awards, which is going to happen here in July, and we're hosting it here at our gallery. and it's just for the Clutha district. And they were asking, "Hey, do you want to judge this?" I'm like, "No." And they're like, "Come on, sure, we're going to have a panel of judges." Like, I don't want to take part in that. I'm not
Mm,
doing it. Nobody has the right to actually pick one thing out better than another, except for that viewer that's having that experience in front of that work in that moment. That's kind of the similar sort of reason why I've shied away from it. But I've heard from so many artists where they've had a big win or a big break from just biting the bullet and jumping in,
mm,
and their work has been picked up, whether it was the Archibald in Australia, here in New Zealand, the Adam Portrait Award, or in the United States, some other competition or award. So it can be a
yeah.
valid method of getting yourself out there, right?
Absolutely. And like it depends on, this is what I keep saying to artists, it depends on what game you want to play.
Mm.
If you want to start the hierarchical climb, if you want to be part of that world. So now I'm talking about the elitist, I think, is what probably would fit the term. The academic, the argumentative, the point makers, the movement changes, the group of artists that tend to sort of feature along the history of art as quite significant, obviously. They're the ones that get recorded in the art history books and get studied and all that sort of stuff. It's a very tiny part of the art world. It gets the most noise. But if that's the game you want to play, then you're going to need a degree, you're going to need an honors, you're going to need gallery representation, but not just any gallery. You're going to need to get specific gallery representation, and you're going to need to enter competitions. But this means that all your work is going to be created around the ideals that form the system. And it's not work that comes from you, it comes from external influences.
Wow.
And it's a very draining brand to maintain for a long period of time. If you're looking at longevity, you're going to need to create the work you love for people that generally are going to be outside of that particular part of the art world. There are misfits in both artists and collectors. And I basically, if my work over the decades that I'm going to be an artist, if my work does eventually make that big of an impact that it becomes included in the historical timeline of the art world, that is an absolute honor. It would be an absolute honor to do that. But I'm not going to actively pursue it because I know that who I am as an artist is going to rebel against the academic art world. And it already has. I tried it. I went to art school and I dropped out. So I already
Well,
know that I don't fit it.
we didn't talk about that. I don't recall ever talking about that. Tell me about, can you mention what school you went to and how that
Um,
went? I mean, you don't have to mention it,
yeah,
like, but was it
I
like a
won't
turn?
mention the name
Okay,
because it is a great art school. It
okay,
very much fits the academic artists. So artists that
okay.
really want to climb that ladder, it's a
Mhm.
great school for those artists to go to. That's why I say it just depends what you want. What you
Okay.
want in your career. Are you really quirky? Like if an artist is like super quirky and
Mhm.
creates work that makes absolutely no sense, but they have fun while doing it and they themselves are a walking art piece, go for it.
Yeah.
You'll fit it. But I went to art school in New Zealand, not
Oh,
Elam.
wow.
It was another one in Auckland, and the whole sales thing, the one that so when I went for my interview with them, I didn't have a New Zealand high school qualification. I was from Zambia, and so I didn't have my boards or whatever it is that you
Mhm.
do in high school. And so I just presented a whole bunch of artwork that I'd done at high school. And
Mhm.
the tutor, he looked at me and he said, "You can already make a career out of what you've got here. Why do you want to come to art school?" And that sort of stuck with me because at 20, well, no, wait, I was 19, sorry. At 19, I already had someone in the academic art world
Mhm.
saying, "You don't need to go to art school. Why do you want to be here?" And I said to him very naively, I said, because I was mostly pencil based, I said, "I want to experiment with paint and I want to learn how to do all this work with color and paint and
Mhm.
push into new areas of art.
Hmm.
And I say it's naive because when you're in art school, they don't teach you about color theory, how to stretch canvases, how to mix your paint, how to paint anything. Basically, they give you a brief. You do what you think is a good interpretation of the brief, and then they completely strip it down and pull it to pieces, basically, to test your ability to conceptualize the practical creation of art, basically. Their focus was more on applying for grants, applying to galleries, so really climbing that hierarchy. Whereas I was more interested in how do I register for tax? How do I run a small business? How do I market my business? How do I sell
Right.
prints? What do I
Yep.
need to know about prints? Like, how do we, and that's obviously that is called commercially focused art.
Hmm.
And apparently that is fairly low on the hierarchy.
Mm.
And so after 2 years, after 1 year, I was like, man, I hate this. And I was like, well, I need to have some form of qualification. And so I was like, well, 1 more year, I'll have a diploma. So I stuck it out for 1 more year and dropped out. I was just like, I'm done, and moved to Australia and started a sole tradership. And yeah, so I don't know, art school and I didn't fit, but the tutors already knew that. I think
Hmm.
from the start, they already saw that I had a passion for realism and that realism wasn't something that was going to fit their school thing.
What were some of the things that they were telling you about your work when they were looking at it when it came up for review or whatever? I mean, in art school we had reviews, right? So you'd
Yeah,
submit your work after a particular,
critiques.
yeah, and then they would stand there and they go, it's pretty
Yeah.
obvious. And I'm like, okay, whatever. But what
Mm.
were some of the things that they were telling you?
I can't even remember, to be honest.
Wow.
Because at the end of the day, well, it was more, well, why did you do it that way? Why
Yeah.
not this way? It was always why. There was never a thought about like what I was doing. So it wasn't just
Hmm.
a visual impact. It was the why, always the concept, the thinking behind it, which ultimately would come out with a visual of some kind. But just it was never the visual. I could never visually create something that was conceptual enough for them to be like, oh, that was really good. There was
Hmm.
never a, hey, you did really well. It was always a, well, why did you do it that way? Why not this way? Well, that doesn't say that. Like it was just,
Mm.
yeah. Mm.
So have you ever been asked to show a qualification for art?
No, no,
That's really
never.
interesting. Okay, okay. Again, I really want to highlight that for anybody listening. Carla Grace, who's kicking it, getting these, sponsorship deals, selling amazing paintings and prints, and it continues to go from strength to strength and is just thriving as a pro. Never been asked for her qualification once. And I want to add to that, I've never been asked for mine. I was a bit of a dummy. I stuck it out and I have a degree in fine art from a university over there in Western Australia. I won't mention the name,
Mhm.
but I still cringe at some of the reviews. I never had the sense to just leave. I think they wanted
Mm.
me to. I probably should have.
They were
They're like,
trying to get you to leave.
they were like, "What are you doing here, man?" And honestly, I'm just going to put it down to me being a bit thick, but I didn't understand that game, and
Mm,
it is a bit of a game, and I just could not play the game, and I still can't play the game.
mm.
But I remember hearing things in art school, from this particular academic institution, which was, okay, if it sells, it's not art, doesn't qualify. And if it's realism or traditional, then well, that's already been done. The other thing I heard was painting is dead. And
Oh,
I was like,
goodness me.
and so it took me 2 years, 2 full years to recover from this experience. And now, like when people are like, well, where did you study? Should I go to art school? I'm like, no, don't do it. Don't go. But interesting because I just recorded another podcast this morning with Michael Klein, who's an amazing artist based in Massachusetts in the United States, and he's running an art school. But
Right.
there's art school and then there's art school.
Mm,
See, I think the thing we missed out on down under, I don't know of a place where you can go and do an atelier. There is no academy in New
mm,
Zealand there that I know of. There could be now, but there is no place that you can go and just study these things like you can in the United States and go, all
mm,
right, I'm in full immersion.
yeah.
What is this?
Mm.
So I don't know. Do you think if that had been available to you, you would have jumped at that opportunity?
Well, that's what I was looking for. I
Mm,
was looking for a place that would teach me everything I needed to know about being a artist, not a starving artist,
yeah.
like an actual artist, someone
Mhm.
that was making a full-time income, was able to sustain a life outside of another full-time job. And that's what I thought I was getting, basically. So what I've now gone and done, which I'm sure is the motive behind your tutorial platform, is I've created the platform, the learning platform that I wish I had. And it's
Fantastic.
basically everything I know. I am slowly, week by week, putting into a video, a tutorial, or a live demonstration so that other artists can skip 10 years of learning and figuring it out and, do that, like a masterclass on printmaking, how to make prints of your artwork. What are the different type of prints? What are the different price
Wow.
brackets?
Wow.
Like what do you want to achieve? Like the overall goal, like that's what I keep saying to artists. It's like, yes, you can go to art school, but that's for a very specific type of artist. Like, what do you want to do? Oh, I want to make art that I love. Okay, don't go to art school.
Just make it.
And yeah, and the most common question I get is, how do I sell my art? Like, how do you sell my art? How do you sell your art? And I'm like, well, I feel like it's not luck, it's good marketing. So then study how to market, study marketing. Like it is
Okay.
all marketing.
Okay. 1 second. 1 second. I'm gonna pull you up at that. What does that mean? Okay, because when you
Yeah.
came up and started,
Mm,
Instagram probably wasn't what it was at what
no.
it is now.
Yeah.
Facebook probably wasn't at what it is now. YouTube, I'm still unsure whether you have a YouTube presence. Did you ever get that channel up and going?
It's there.
Okay. Okay.
I
So
post
so
there once a month. Yeah, it's
okay.
happening
So
slowly.
so so okay.
Mm,
So there has been, some, blood, sweat, and tears put into this
mm,
promotion kind of thing. But what was the difference for you back then marketing yourself
yeah.
versus some of the things that you would encourage people to do today? Has your approach has it changed? Would you use
Ah,
more of what's
marketing
available today?
marketing techniques have changed. I feel like they change on a daily basis, to be
Right.
honest, because it's so pivoting around social media. And
Hmm.
social media is obviously governed by the powers that be that decide what the algorithm is going to be.
Hmm.
And the algorithm changes, and all of a sudden, you've had a very consistent, well-performing platform that goes to absolutely zero overnight. So, it's marketing is a way of being flexible about how you capture what you do so that people can see it and enjoy the process along with you and end up buying what you release. So less than 1% of your audience are going to be buyers. And it's that 1% that really obviously takes the cake. So obviously then, but like in saying that, you think having the larger audience means you'll have more sales. That is not true at all. I had more sales, like higher value sales, when I had under 5,000 followers. But now so combined, I've got over 500,000 followers. I would say it is harder to market to them than it is to market to a smaller audience. And this is probably going to trigger you, probably going to be excited about this. I am completely canceling my blue tick verification, the meta verification blue tick thing,
I'm still trying to get
because
mine. What's going on?
it's there's a
Okay.
subscription. There's a subscription now. So what Instagram was doing, is doing, they're saying that when you subscribe to get this blue tick verification, you get support, like tech support. You can 24 hours, you can have someone support you. It's obviously safer. You have a safer account, because I was getting all these fraudulent accounts created
Mhm.
without having that blue tick. There was no way for people to know that this was the genuine account or not. So um, it didn't help. It did not. So $25 a month for absolutely no service. For the honor of talking to either a bot, talking to AI, or talking to someone who has a script. And it just got to the point. So after having subscribed and getting my verification, my Facebook account got hacked and stolen from me April last year. And I was working with Meta support, apparently going to their team in Germany that was like going to escalate my case and all that sort of thing. 5 months later, nothing had been resolved, and I ended up outsourcing to a media company who 6 weeks after that managed to get my account back. So what was the point in the blue tick verification? And I was like, okay, that's a pretty extreme example. I'm going to just, wait it out. And so with the trip to Johannesburg, from my first post from Johannesburg on Instagram, absolutely dead organic reach. It's like the algorithm picked up the change in location and shadow banned. Like, we'll call it shadow banning. It's apparently not real, but it is.
It is.
Yeah. And basically, like, I could send you a screenshot of my analytics in following from the first post in Johannesburg. It's been, so like now we're talking months. It's been below zero. It's been flatlined. And so I'm like, I'm having to outsource again to get this resolved. And this is after talking to Instagram support, Meta support, whatever. And each time, like, this is regular, I'm talking to them. I'm like, what's going on? Why is my account being squashed? Like, it's been annihilated. And nothing. So I'm like, what is the point in the blue tick verification when I'm not getting anything for my money? Because I have a subscription available for artists to learn about everything that I do. And I know that if I don't uphold my end of the bargain, like, what are they getting? I've got to still do the work and actually still deliver the goods. And I just don't feel like social media. So when it comes to the marketing now, so going back to it, marketing is, I feel at this stage, it's having the flexibility in the way that you promote yourself to adapt to what's working, and then suddenly it doesn't work, so then you change. You change and you keep going and you adapt, and you still, it's about creating content. It's about creating engagement, which is what all platforms do, whether it's on TV, on radio, on podcasts, on YouTube, whatever. You're creating engagement. So it's about really understanding that platform and creating the content that best matches that. So you're essentially a content curator, and you fill that content with your art. And so it's about being able to use a camera properly and do all those things and use lighting and all those cinematic effects that actually create really nice footage. And it's about talking about what you do from a bit of a distance. So it's not so personal. It's that, again, leading back to that promotion where you are almost like a separate, you got to sort of see it from fresh eyes. If no one has ever seen this profile or ever seen, if someone doesn't know you, are they going to be able to understand what you're about from what you're posting? If not, are you targeting the right people? Like, it's being able to think about all these different things.
We're going to get back to the podcast in just a second. I just wanted to take a quick breather here and let you know about our sponsor, Rosemary & Co. Now, Rosemary & Co. make the finest quality artist brushes in the world, in my opinion. I use them every day here in the studio for creating my monumental landscape and portrait paintings. Now, what I love about Rosemary & Co. is that attention to detail in their brush lines and the consistent quality that I can expect every time I open a packet of brushes. I'm looking for all kinds of different brushes for a whole variety of techniques, whether it's applying paint thickly or creating some exquisite fine detail. I know that Rosemary & Co. have got just the brush that I'm looking for. But it's not just for oil painters like me. They also make fantastic acrylic brushes, watercolor brushes, heck, even makeup artists use their brushes. These really are hands down the best brushes in the world, and Rosemary & Co. have been making these brushes for over 40 years. That's a mountain of experience right there, and I know these guys know what they're doing. So if you want to get your hands on some of the best oil painting brushes, acrylic brushes, watercolor brushes in the world, then check that link in the description that's accompanying this podcast. Check those show notes, click that link, and check out their website at rosemaryandco.com. And a huge shout out and a thank you to Rosemary & Co. for sponsoring this episode. All right, let's jump straight back into this conversation with Carla Grace. Do you get tired of it?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
So it's like, I think if you're able to study marketing, you develop a certain analytical mind when it comes to assessing these platforms and assessing methods and, this is the technique that you can use in this situation. So marketing, it's an array of different techniques, and it's subtle changes, and it's wording and hooks and SEO and all that sort of thing. And I think I find it so draining because I didn't study it. I don't understand the foundations of marketing. I feel like I'm just trying to keep my head above water and grasping at the changes and then trying to desperately apply it to what I'm doing.
Wow.
So I think if anyone wants to study anything related to running your own business, which is what being an artist is, marketing is probably going to be the cornerstone to what separates how people can interact with your work and what doesn't. And unfortunately, I feel like I'm just all over the shop, and I'm just sort of grasping at concepts that as I get them.
Yeah.
So yeah.
There's something that I've said to my students quite often, and I'm a big believer in this, that selling yourself as an artist, selling your work, and when I say selling yourself, like I'm also a big believer in, what Gary Vee says about building a personal brand. But really the concept of a personal brand, selling yourself, selling your work, this is something that's older than social media. And one thing I really love, I tell my students this all the time, is what we do as artists for us to have like a really amazing business is taking that old school stuff and the new school stuff and bringing them together and combining them. And when we do that, now suddenly we have something that's a little bit sustainable. But what we can come back to that and riff on that, because I'd love to get your thoughts on that. But I just want to reflect on what you're saying, because I too am so tired of the online stuff, the Instagram stuff, and all of this. I love my people. I love posting. I love sharing. But if you don't get to a point where you can manage this stuff, it will eat you. I want to ask you a personal question now.
Okay.
Because I know that this can be a thing for some artists. How do you, Carla Grace, manage your stress levels? How do you keep it together? Do you keep it together?
Considering that I'm sleep deprived because I've got two very young children and a puppy now because I'm crazy,
Oh, no.
keeping it together looks like trying to maintain a healthy lifestyle. So exercising regularly, trying to minimize the coffee and sugar intake, etc., hormone levels, blah, 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 sleep, etc. And I think the hardest part for all of this, especially when you're doing brand collaborations, building a studio, big pieces of artwork that are going to hopefully sell at auction and donate a lot of money, it's overwhelming. And when you work from home, as you usually do as an artist, it's very hard to separate the stress and the pressure, because you don't have a drive home. You don't have this extended break. So a lot of people, I think, take for granted that drive time, going from a stressful day at work to go home, because you can enter like a Zen mode. It's like meditation, to have just that one-on-one time where you just have music on or you have nothing on. Obviously there's road rage, and I don't miss that. But the ability to disconnect and have a little gap of time between the stressful day at work and the pressure, and separating that from your day to day. The kids come home, you got to cook dinner, you got to get the kids showered, go to bed, etc., and they're fighting you, and then the dog's biting everybody and getting wound up, and it's just like it just goes from one pressure to the next to the next. And I've actually struggled with this quite a lot recently, is having that separation, and creating an environment where I can like actively stop, desensitize, and then go into the family life, etc. And especially now that my husband is working with me, for me, it's arguable.
For you.
We he obviously sees me as a stressful person at work, under pressure, trying to get stuff done, like going frantic. And so he's like, there's no separation between that person, because he's seeing me in my work mode, and then that feeds into the relationship that leads on at night. Whereas when you come home to your partner, you've had a time to like disconnect, calm, and then you go, hi, how are you, how was your day? Whereas it's like from start to end, it's just like bam, 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 like there's no separation.
Yeah.
So this is hard because I exercise in the morning and walk the dog in the morning, and it's sort of when it gets to the end of the day, I'm going from finishing here quickly and then running into the house to start cooking, and tidying up and all that sort of stuff. And this is a big issue for me, and the family. So if I'm honest, I don't have that part under control. That has to come through extreme mental resilience and discipline on my part, to be able to mentally block that pressure and frustration, like to the point where I don't even feel it. When I get home, I've got a 100-meter walk between the house and the studio, and during that time I've got to do some deep breathing, and I got to sort of find just a neutral zone. And like I greet Winston, our puppy, and he gives me lots of cuddles and kisses, and like I use that interaction to then feed positive energy into the next one, which is usually Ryan saying, hey, how's it going? And then we sort of do that. So if I'm honest, I think it's going to come down to some acute meditation between the studio and the house, and maintaining a healthy lifestyle, because it's very hard for me to separate work, home, life balance at the moment.
I appreciate your honesty here and your openness with me here on the podcast. I gotta say, I know exactly what that space is like. I've found myself in a similar situation with Rachel, and before we had our son Hugo, she was working full time in the business too. The website was hers. She edited a lot of the YouTube videos. Customer service is all being taken care of by her, and for whatever time she can put in. But when we were working so closely, to find that separation was between those roles, um did it does take a toll. It really does. The one thing I found that helped me, and is helping me a lot more now, is just having that moment of gratitude for them. Like I'm sure, I know you're very grateful for what you have. So I'm not suggesting anything, but like just for myself personally, I felt that I didn't previously show enough appreciation and respect for her for what she did. And now that she's really taken a step back with being there full time with our son, I kind of go, oh, far out, babe, you got to come back to the business. I need you back in the business. But, fortunately, we became better and better at juggling these roles. But I found the thing that got me out of that is just knowing that I could not have done it without her. I just cannot do it without her. It really takes a team, doesn't it?
It does.
And when you think about, Carla Grace, you paint animals. No, you are doing so much more than that. You are doing so, and I bet there's a lot of what you do that actually does take away. It's quite taxing from the painting time. How good is it? Just come on, level with me here. How good is it to just go, oh, I got a painting day today. I get to paint for
Oh,
4 hours.
it is a real treat. It is rare, but it's a real treat. Like today, I got out and was like, I'm going to be able to paint most of today. I've got a podcast with Andrew that'll take about 2 hours. I've got to do deliverables for Caboodle, and that ended up taking all morning. And I got to pick up Winston because he's having played out. So it's like, hang on, it's not a painting day. Like
Oh,
it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon and I haven't touched the brushes. So like to get a painting day, gosh,
oh,
it's a
wow.
good day. Like, and then Ryan says to me, he's like, so just paint. I'm like, you don't understand. Like I can't just paint because
Yeah,
all this list of other things. And he's like, so paint during the day and do the other things at night. And I was like, can't do that.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
it just it doesn't work. So, but there is like, okay, in saying that, I need to be more strict with
Hmm.
how I allocate my time because I have a habit of wanting to do all those little things that are on the
Oh,
list before I sit down to paint. And unfortunately, that means I will never get round to painting.
hmm.
And it is the painting that is the most important part of what makes Carla Grace art function. And so, what Ryan says is true. Like, paint first and then do all the other stuff. Whether it's a 4-day paint, a 4-hour paint, or a 6-hour paint, or even a 2-hour paint. Paint first and then do the other stuff. So it's like just shift the day, flip it upside down, and then you'll get more painting done. And it's like, okay, I have to do that.
He's exactly right. He's exactly right.
Mm,
And shout out to Vanessa Jones who helps me. She's a coordinator of sorts, but she's just really helped me so much with so many things about the academy. But putting together our newsletter for the academy. But I was texting her today, just saying, Vanessa, I'm not going to be meeting today. I got to paint. I got to start
mm,
prioritizing this. I had a massive conversation
mm.
with Rachel about this very thing, and that's the only way it can work. Without
Yeah.
painting, there is no Tischler. Like it's
Mm,
just and that's what people know me for. But they'd be shocked when they realized how little time I actually got to spend in front of the easel. And it's
yeah.
like, oh, you just get to paint all the time. No, I don't. I really would love to, but I'm going to do exactly what Ryan's saying as well because I've had it's bizarre. We're having the same conversation. I bet. What day did you have that conversation? My conversation with her was yesterday, in fact. But I said to her, yeah, I said, oh my goodness, you're so right. I'm going to start the day here. I'm going to prioritize this because if we don't get this over the line, then we've really got nothing.
Mm,
And I suddenly am feeling a lot better at just letting things go. You know,
mm.
they will get taken care of. The important stuff will get taken care of. But I'm curious to hear how this art school, this way that you deploy your online art tutorials, have you set up a subscription model? Is that
Mm,
is that okay? So do you find like because I found with my subscription model, I love it. Oh my goodness, we've created such a community over at Tisch Academy. It's amazing, and it's continuing to grow. Um, the thing is, though, is that has what's created the flywheel effect and the pressure effect.
mm.
People listening to this, it's okay. I want to say this to the camera. I love you. Okay. It's not your fault. It's not your fault. I'm trying to be better for you. Okay. Okay. But do you find that pressure, that continual pressure, like that pressure can keep me up at night?
Mm. Yep. Like this week, I need to either do a live demonstration or create a little micro tutorial to release by Friday. And the reason I set up the subscription model is because I have too many tutorials available, basically.
Mhm.
And so I've been creating tutorials basically since 2020 about my technique and how I work. It's mostly been acrylic focused because that's mainly what I've been perfecting over the past few years. And now I'm transitioning to more oil-based things
Mhm.
because I've ticked the acrylic box. I don't feel like I can do it any better. And so now then my tutorials are going to transition to be more oil-based. So I got to a point where I was like, I had people that wanted to buy these tutorials every time I released it. And I was like, this isn't fair. Like they're having to pay $50, $80 every time I release a new tutorial. and I'm doing them monthly. So if I do a subscription, that's like $30, $35 a month, they can get all the tutorials and have access to them for as long as they want to be subscribed. It's like the most cost-effective way for an artist to get access to everything that I'm creating. And having that subscription is like having someone like tapping me on the shoulder saying, you need to share this, you need to make a tutorial out of this is good, you should make a tutorial, this is what they need to know. And they send in their request, they're like, hey, I saw you making dust bags in the studio on your reels, please can you show us how to make the dust bags for paintings? I was like, okay, so make a tutorial for the dust bags. It's just
what the heck is a dust bag?
Oh, let me show you.
Show me a dust bag.
It's funny. A dust bag is literally what the name suggests. So this is a sold painting that I'm holding for a collector, and I make a fabric dust bag for each painting. And the painting just slips in, and it's just a cotton sheeting fabric. And I just make this little pocket that it goes into, because a lot of the collectors that I have, so collectors out there, have art on rotation, and they put their paintings into storage. They wrap them in bubble wrap or whatever wrapping they have available. And I was honored enough to go into one of my collectors' home, and they showed me their collection. Wow. Terrifying how paintings get stored. And so I said, this is never happening to the paintings that I ever send out. I am making dust bags. So cotton, lint free, just it's meant to get dusty. Like I can probably choose a different color than white. Just white and gold is my brand. So I make these cotton dust bags, my little sewing machine. I'm terrible at sewing, but I can do a straight line. And so my subscribers are like, hey, please teach us how you make dust bags. So made them a tutorial on how to make dust bags. So it's like all these little things, like how to make boxes and how to do just so many little things that people I think neglect when they're being this professional artist. They forget that other people don't know, and that you didn't know it at some stage, and that somewhere along the line you learned how to do it and you take that knowledge for granted. And so my tutorial platform is like this little finger on my shoulder that's like, come on, this is a good one. You're doing this today, so just film it. Do it like as a tutorial or a demo or whatever. And people are just getting all these little bits and pieces, and hopefully saving a lot of time and money, being able to learn it in a little video.
I really hope you don't take this the wrong way, but have you ever seen the movie Love Actually?
Yes.
Okay, so I think I've got the right movie, but there's a scene where Alan Rickman's character goes in to buy a present, and Rowan Atkinson is the store clerk, and he's wrapping up the present, and he do you know the scene? You know what I'm talking about? And he wraps it, he puts a little bow on it, or I can't even remember how it goes. And then he sprays a little something, and then a little sprinkle of potpourri in there, and he's like, "Oh, come on, speed it up, come on." He's like, "Oh, the flashes, sir." You are like the Rowan Atkinson from that scene of art marketing. But I say that tongue in cheek, because what you do is brilliant. What you actually do is, and yes, okay, intriguing tutorial to share with your followers, but what you do is show the care and respect for what you've just done in your work, but also the client, by continuing to find ways to add value to them. Like your branding, Carla, and the way you do that is second to none. I did some very basic certificates of authenticity prior to you know doing the prints. We had them back in the day when I used to show in Perth, and then I just started doing them again. But that was really inspired by you. I've dropped the ball on that. I got to pick those up again. But that was just one way of having some way that you add value. But I love that. Dust bags, far out. I don't know if I'm going that far, but
You're not going to sit at a sewing machine, Andrew.
Dude,
Do
I
a
got
little bit
that.
of sewing.
I got that much to do. Maybe I can delegate that. I don't know. I don't know.
It's like, how do I fit it in? Like, how do you get the time for it?
Yeah,
Oh,
I just be like, screw it.
yeah. I do it to myself.
Use a bubble wrap. Just use a bubble wrap. I don't care. I don't
Yeah.
care. Just bubble wrap the dang thing. Wow, wow. Um, okay, so I think it was about a year ago, around that time, you were painting a painting, and you posted it online,
Hmm.
and it was, I believe it was of a unicorn or a stallion or something, but I could, you have painted a unicorn, haven't you? I think it was this.
Wasn't a
Eh,
unicorn.
It
It
wasn't a
teased
unicorn.
with the fantasy though. It was just a white monochromatic series. I think I know where you're going with this.
Forgive me for misremembering that. I don't know why I put a horn on it
It's
in my head,
no,
but
it's good because that's where I was going with it.
okay, okay.
Yes, yeah.
So you know where I'm going with this. Okay,
Mm,
okay, because I'm really curious to hear your thoughts.
mhm,
I promise we won't get in a fight about it, but I was just like, oh, interesting. Okay, what do you think about this? We have, since our last podcast, and it's so interesting how fast this has happened. Mind you, we spoke on the podcast a long while ago. We've spoken since, just in the meantime. But AI is
mm,
now a thing that has
mm,
seemed to, I mean, even AI has been here for a while, but it just seems to be getting more and more and bigger and bigger. And now, yeah, I don't know what to think when I'm scrolling on Instagram. Like somebody was
mm.
sharing something to me and going, "Oh, isn't this person's sculptures amazing?" And I was looking at it going, "Oh, come on, it's AI generated. Come on." So there's a lot of fakery out there, but
Mm.
you found an interesting way to interface with it and use the AI for your art. Now, I've got a particular take. I've got a very strong opinion about this,
Mhm,
but I'm not gonna force that on you. But tell me, how do you feel about this technological development, and
mm,
how has that informed your artistic process? Is this something you're going to do more of, or and how did that one experiment go for you?
mm. So, in order to answer this fully for viewers, I need to give a bit of background to where my direction is going with
Mhm.
my wildlife art. So, the piece in question is part of a series that I'm working on basically from now until I lose inspiration for it. It is a monochromatic themed series where I'm putting together wildlife and stuff, whether it's other animals, drapery, food, basically anything that fits the color theme and the overall concept for the painting. So my first one was a white on white piece, and it was a white horse shrouded in drapery, and the drapery ended up becoming detailed like a bridal veil. So it was transparent in places. I put embroidery on it. Um, and the horse is done in such a way where the mane is flowing, and the way that
Mhm.
I've created the movement in the mane alludes to this element of fantasy. So there's this play, obviously white on white, it had to be bridal, like there had to be a bridal theme to it. It's impossible to avoid that. And so it was this play on fantasy versus reality. The drapery is done in such a way it looks like it could be choking, but it's also moving in such a way that there's
Mhm.
freedom in it. So,
Mhm.
like, there's this play. I mean, you can let your interpretation of marriage and being a bride and freedom versus restrictions, whatever. So, where I'm going with my wildlife is I want it to be more than just a pretty picture of an animal. It has to be beautiful, it has to be realistic and intriguing, but there needs to be other elements at play that convey something that is a little bit more deep than it's a picture of a tiger. Cool. It's a picture of a horse. Oh, okay, cool. You know, creating something that is the more you look, the more you see. Like I've latched onto that and I've really run with it.
Mm.
So what I have been doing to create these pieces is I've been staging um, the shapes and stuff and then adding the elements. So, like, for example, you can't exactly put flowers all over a rhino and photograph it in a particular light in the studio. So I've been using props to create the shape of a rhino, which I have photographed, and then I go and recreate that lighting in the studio, and then I add all the props to it. And so what I was interested in with AI is putting together all these elements that you can't get in reality. So putting a chimpanzee in a tea party setting, reaching through the lens to try and invite you in. Like I had Ryan pose for that and had broken teapots all around him and all this sorts of thing. And like that's a very cumbersome, time-consuming, frustrating way of putting together reference material, which doesn't actually end up working because the lighting and proportions and all that, it's not quite right. So I've been interested with AI coming along to see whether or not I can create my reference material combining all these like bizarre elements, it's not bizarre, like beautiful, putting them together in a cohesive way to almost like visualize, is this idea even going to work? First of all, is it going to look like anything at all? So I'm not spending weeks putting together this idea that ends up not working. And so once I created, like it took me weeks anyway, but a different kind of labor, I was able to do it in parts. And I managed to eventually get the AI thing, which is pain in the bum, to create this image that is what I saw in my head. And the main thing with creating a reference image through AI is you can't use it for your painting, especially when it comes to anatomy, because the anatomy is completely wrong. So I used it solely to put ideas together and visualize it and create cohesive lighting, contrast elements, color, etc. And it basically served as a tool that I then was able to use to go forward. So then I went and I found drapery that would work for this. I found the lacing and the embroidery because it had like the AI did some weird things. Like I used about 15 different images and I had drapery over there and I had like lace from over there and I painted the horse about 5 times because I first sort of put the whole thing together from the base sort of concept, and then I repainted it, and then I worked with 2 other photographers. So I separated from AI like base image to my true reference images, and I struggled to find a horse that would fit the mood of what I was trying to create, which obviously now I have like this concrete visual through the AI tool that I was using. And so then I eventually, thank God, found a reference photo of a horse, and the photographer was phenomenal. She was so excited to be, because she was following me, thankfully. And so I worked with her to put the face of the horse, and then I had to blend it into the ears and the mane and the drapery and sort of rework all these different layers. It was a huge learning curve. But basically from that whole experience, AI as a support tool, not as a final go-to reference product for artists. I think that there is a lot to be said for originality. And if you're able to create something through AI that is able to visualize an original concept, so for example, putting together like Frankensteining a reference photo. So not just saying photo of a tiger looking at the camera, like that's not an original reference image. That's just lazy. That's like, oh, well, that was AI. Well, no, AI has used those images from actual photographers. Go search for a photographer and work directly with them and get their permission. Using AI to create a really simple reference photo is just kind of a little bit lazy because it's already out there with actual people attached to it. So as a tool, as a way of creating a foundation of concreting a concept that is like, what the heck? Like how do you get a horse to pose and do drapery, and it's like the amount of time and effort and trial and error that you're able to negate and use it as a tool to make your process more efficient, like using a camera to photograph a scene to then repaint in your studio. It's a tool that can enable your practice to become more efficient. It doesn't replace originality. If you're using it to replace or come up with your original thoughts, then I think that it may be a reflection on you as an artist, not so much on AI. And I think AI can be used in a very helpful way. And if you're using it as a way to shortcut originality and your own artistic ability, then I think it's a very dangerous line to walk when you're using basically the art from other artists. And saying, oh, it's AI, so I don't owe anybody anything, because that's not quite true.
That's really interesting to hear, like how you've used it, because there's obviously quite a lot that went into it, and now that I understand that it was not an AI generated, uh, image, that you still were relying on references and drapery and physical props. It sounds like a
Mm.
whole lot of different
Oh,
things going into it.
mm,
But it's really interesting the data sets that AI runs off of. Um,
mm,
Forgive me if you ever listen to the podcast, but there's a gentleman by the name, I think his last name was Zapata, and he did a fantastic video on AI, and about his take on it. But one thing that he spent a lot of time focusing on was how AI uses what's been uploaded and the sample data sets that it's
mm,
drawing from. But the thing that freaks me out, I just talked to Samuel Earp on the podcast about this just recently, is just how advanced it's getting, how intelligent it's getting. The first iterations, we all laughed when we saw Dali, putting a few of these, crude images together. We thought, nothing about it. Don't worry about it. And then, in about a year, it's doing photorealistic stuff. You're like, oh, okay, good night. One thing it
yeah.
can't do though is hands. That's really interesting watching it try and do hands. Have you ever seen that? You got a whole bunch of 6 and 7 fingered freaks.
Yeah.
Uh, but oh my goodness. What I was talking to Sam about, and this was something I saw in a Marcus Brownlee video, which is AI doing video from a text prompt.
Mm.
HD video. Have you seen this?
No, no,
This is
no.
worth going down this rabbit hole. Have a look tonight. Check it out with Ryan because it'll blow his mind as well. Like, but you can type in, in this video, he was typing in various things, but or at least showcasing from other prompts. But there was one like rear view of a four-wheel drive car going down a dirt road in a mountain wilderness or whatever, and it's about a minute long. It can generate a minute long video, and you can't tell it's not shot with a 1080 or whatever, like a GoPro following
Mm.
that car. It looks so, and then it was showing drone shots over landscapes, completely fake, completely AI generated. And
Wow.
if you
Mm,
didn't know what to look for, you wouldn't really be able to tell the difference. And the question remains, okay, well, you could see how that might displace a filmmaker or a photographer, right? And writers now as well. Like, okay, look, I'm guilty. You can call me a hypocrite, in the comments or whatever, whoever's listening to this. But as critical as I've been of AI with art, I have dabbled in it and used it a bit for writing copy. It's just the amount of copy that I have to write for what I do. Sometimes I get over to that chat GPT and I'm like, come on, help me out here. Come on. But it's a really interesting conundrum, isn't it?
mm,
I'm curious though, with people that are particularly worried and freaking out about how this is going to impact them as an artist and impact their career.
mm.
Do you see it as a threat?
No.
Okay. What would you say to those who are worried about losing their artistic place because they might be, supplanted by a machine?
First, I would ask what their business structure is, what type of art they're creating. So, I think the industry of printmaking and merchandise, designs, wallpapers, things like that, where you're really monetizing, basically creating many varieties on your designs, that kind of art, I can understand how this can be alarming, because companies can just go to AI and say, create the design for a wallpaper that is the fairyland or whatever, and that was your thing, and now it's being replaced by AI. So those sorts of things. So the first thing that I would ask an artist is, what is your business plan? What do you do as an artist? Because these rules don't apply to everybody. There is no one rule fits all. If we were to just focus on our genre, so traditional art, paintings, paint on canvas, AI, unless it's physically being painted by a robot, it's not replacing traditional art. AI generated imagery, I would say, from my perspective, is just another genre. It's another it's another part of what makes the art world so diverse and ultimately interesting, because you're getting these phenomenal images that are created and like they look awesome. Honestly, I love looking at what some people can design with AI, because it just puts together the most phenomenal things. Like there's this page that I follow, they create fashion through AI using nature and these beautiful dresses with beautiful models and beautiful scenery. It's completely AI generated, but it's beautiful to look at. And you wouldn't be able to do that in reality. And no one is replacing reality with that. It's just another form of design or art. Mm-hmm. So for traditional artists, where you're applying physical paint to a painting, I don't think that it's competition. I don't think it's going to replace us, because artists that create art for a living rely on collectors that buy traditional art. People that love buying traditional art are not going to buy AI generated art. That's a completely different market. And I mean, if everyone is like, I'm not buying an actual person painting, I'm just going to go buy an AI. Well, if everyone did that, well, with what do you say to that? It's a completely different realm. It's a different it's almost like a different reality to me, that is just like another world of worry. But people that love traditional art will always buy traditional art. They will never buy AI. And I'm hopefully gonna be able to keep making paintings and keep selling them to people that like buying paintings. And even if people stop buying paintings, I'll still keep making paintings. It's not going to I think we get caught up in the unknown. AI hasn't taken the place of traditional art yet, and you don't know what's going to happen. I mean, unless robots take the place of humans in every area of the workforce and start making paintings, like I can't see that happening in my lifetime. Even though there are some robots that are doing things on canvases, it's not replacing. And the unknown, the fear, I think there's a lot of fear involved with like it's debilitating to fear something, and fear is usually based on the unknown, the unexpected, something that you can't quantify. And I make a big effort I choose not to live in fear. And so I will not base the decisions I make off of fear, because I find fear to be very irrational and crippling. And usually the decisions that are made based on fear are not sustainable or good in any way. So I choose to be a little bit more positive, I think, than most people. But I mean, I'm also realistic. If people stopped buying my artwork because there was a computer generating exactly what I was doing, then I would question my goal plan and how I would get there, whether I focus completely on tutorials or whatever it is. There's always a way around it, but I'll always keep making art regardless of what computers are doing.
Yeah. A perfect answer. I love that. I absolutely love that. And you know, there's this other side as well. Like I got this comment on a digital painting video that I was doing, and somebody was like, "Why do this? AI already has you whipped." And I'm like, "Because, dude, because the joy is in the doing as well.
Mm,
You know, it's like
mm.
why would I delegate or get somebody else to eat my lunch for me or do my push-ups for me? You know,
Yeah,
the benefit is in the doing.
yeah.
And that's where I personally find my happy place is actually getting that time in front of the canvas. And I actually do happen to like, you know, back to the AI for the design, you know, I do happen to like the slow slog of the analog process. That said, I do use digital, which has sped me up. And I got criticized heavily for just going digital, not using AI, but just doing Photoshop. I'm like, okay, you know, sometimes you just can't win. I mean, we all have a way of doing things. But, you know, after hearing your explanation, I think I might have to lighten up on this a little bit because I put out a YouTube video. I'm not sure if you saw it, but about AI. And you know, it got some pretty hefty criticism, which is probably fair enough. Maybe I didn't understand enough about it at the time, but I still more or less am sticking to my guns there. And I think you would agree with most of what I said. So we can still be friends. But what I was kind of essentially getting at is that when you rely on this thing and use that as the entirety of your
Mm,
image,
yeah.
then that ends up leaching all of the art out of this,
Mm,
you know, as a process, but also as a product at the end of the day. It's no
mm,
longer become something that we could even call art. You know, what is it for it to be AI generated art? It almost seems like a bit of a contradiction of terms. You know, AI art. It's
mm.
like AI can't, it cannot produce art. It's not, you know,
Yeah.
it's so it seems kind of interesting. But the one thing and I also like that you're not living in fear, but the one thing that does get me, I have these visions, these terrors of these Terminator-like robots with paintbrushes in their hands, painting exhibitions, and just like with that Terminator music, that dun dun, and it's yeah, it's that old whatever they called it from Terminator 2, the skeleton robot painting. They're doing a great job of it too. Oh, Carla, look, I really just want to thank you so much for being on this episode of the Creative Endeavor podcast. Before we end things here, I'd love to know what's next on the horizon for you. You know, you've got this amazing studio. You know, what are some of the projects that are coming up, and what are you really looking forward to here in the next few months to the
Mm.
next year?
Well, I am immediately starting a project for the Kevin Richardson Foundation where I'm putting together this complicated composition of lions from an aerial perspective. They're obviously working with me on it. So it's going to be a really interesting collaboration, which I'm very excited about because all the lions that I'm painting are his lions. So he's going to be narrating the story of their lives while I'm doing the painting as well. So it's just going to be this really beautiful thing to follow. And I'm also going to be teaching how I'm doing what I'm doing to my tutorial subscription tutorial platform. So if anyone wants to learn wildlife art and how I do what I do, both acrylic and oil paint, and want to get in on the weekly um, knowledge dump, basically, then hop over to my website. That's going to be an ongoing thing for the foreseeable future.
Mhm.
But basically, I'm just floating from one big painting to the next. My work is going to drift further and further away from the standard, what I call classic wildlife portrait, and become much more interesting and involved and have so much more happening in each painting. And I'm sharing everything along the way. So it's it is what it is, basically.
That
And we're
sounds
just
absolutely wonderful.
fake it till we make it. Is that the thing?
You're far from faking it, Carla Grace. Far from faking it. No, you're the real deal. And I really just, yeah, look forward to these opportunities to get to talk to you. I for one, learn a load just from following you and these conversations. So once again, thank you so much for being on the Creative Endeavor.
Thank you for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Well, I really hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Creative Endeavor podcast, and a huge thank you and shout out to Carla Grace for joining me. If you want to check out Carla's amazing work, then follow her on Instagram at Carla_Grace_art, and on her website, carlagraceart.com. I know you're going to be blown away by her work as well. She's one to watch. Make sure you're following her on Instagram and also check out that website. You know, I say this in the podcast all the time, but success leaves clues. If you want to get what they got, you got to do what they did. And I just love following artists like Carla because I'm always getting new ideas for my approach to my art career. There's always something there that can be applied to just get a little bit further ahead. And I'm so grateful for artists like Carla for being so open and making themselves available to have conversations like this, that we all get to take part and just find that edge and push ourselves along a little bit more. Now, if you enjoyed this episode, then please do me a huge favor and leave me a rating or a review on whatever audio platform you're listening on. It makes a huge difference to the show. Thank you so much for doing that. And also, if you wouldn't mind, share this on Instagram, share it on Facebook, share it on Twitter, share it wherever you can, and really help spread the word about this podcast. I really appreciate that too. Each week, it's just getting out to more and more people. I couldn't do this without you. And if you're enjoying these episodes and you're getting something out of this, then just do me a solid and make sure you share it. And thank you so much for doing that for me. All right, I'm going to get out of here and get back to painting, but thank you so much for spending this time with me here in the studio. I've really enjoyed your company, and I'll see you again in another episode of The Creative Endeavor.